And we are back, officially.
We're back, motherfuckers.
Hello and welcome to episode 69 of a Sideways Life podcast, the honest guide to living and working abroad. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Al.
And we are back, officially.
We're back, motherfuckers. Well, so we've been away for 3 weeks.
We were meant to be away for 3 days.
Well, let's just tell the story. So, Leah, do you want to tell the story of us going to Zagreb?
So we went to Zagreb.
Which is the capital of Croatia, in case you don't know.
Yes, it is. We had some friends who live part-time in Croatia at the minute. They're moving out full-time in the summer, which is awesome. Hello, Kath and Dave.
Hello.
So they were over. So we went up to Zagreb for a few nights. Spent a night on our own, a couple of nights with them. It was fabulous. It was lovely. We had the Plivice Lakes.
Plivice, I think it's called. But that was like, had we definitely planned that, or we were
we had. We definitely planned the Sunday night there because it was on our list of things to do before we left Croatia. Mm-hmm. So we went there, and when we were driving from the lakes to where we were staying that night, I think. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, we're only about an hour and a half away from Zadar, which is another city in Croatia that's on our list. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, should we just extend our trip by a night or two? And
just to be clear, you didn't say that. You were quiet for about 3 or 4 minutes, then you went, shall we just keep driving?
I didn't. I said, should we just extend for a couple of nights? We're that close. It seems daft not to. And then Al said,
fuck it.
Well, if we're going to do that, we might as well go to Dubrovnik, which was 5 hours away. There was no reason to go to Dubrovnik.
It was a long, long way away. Just to give, if you're not sure of the geography, that's the right word, of Croatia, it's kind of like, I don't know, imagine like Italy, but being pushed on its side. So Dubrovnik is Sicily, Rome is probably Zadar, and then the very top, which is Verona, is it the top?
Sure,
Trieste?
Yeah.
That'll be sort of Istria. So we live at one end of Croatia, to the point where we're about 90 minutes from Slovenian border, and Dubrovnik is the other end, about 60 minutes from the Montenegrin border. Montenegrin? I feel bad saying Montenegrin. I feel like they shouldn't use that word.
I think they're allowed to because it's in the name of their country.
And it is also Balkan for black.
Indeed.
Moving on.
Off to a great start.
Yeah, it's gone well so far. So, reason we're telling you all this is that we went away for 4 nights. We stayed away for about a month. It was maybe just short of a month, wasn't it?
Just shy, yeah.
About 3.5 weeks. And there are certain things we learned. Now, the reason why you've not heard from us is because we didn't take our microphones with us. We didn't take our little microphone recording thing with us. So we could have recorded it. In fact, we did record a really rubbish podcast on my phone, I think, which was like about 3 minutes long, going, hello, we messed up, we're back soon. But we are now back in our house in Istria, and we've been talking over a few gins, as if you regular listeners will know, that is what we are wont to do. And we've come up with several things that we learned.
We learned some stuff.
When we ran away from home.
Mm-hmm. We did run away.
We did. And we'll talk a little bit towards the end about why we ran away from home, because I think that's really important. So if you are covering, this is going to be a great episode for those people who have travelled a lot, and then the pandemic has stopped them, and now they've been in one place for a long time. This is a great episode for you because that's the same with us. Mm-hmm. It's always going to apply to anyone who's thinking of moving abroad and going, right, I'm going to go and find one place and live there forever. This is a great episode for you. Anyone else? Any other demographics we can potentially touch with with this particular episode?
I guess maybe people, they want to know a bit more about Croatia and the places. I'm not sure we'll go into much depth. I think that's another conversation for another day, but I'm sure we will chat about the various places that we spent time.
Okay, so do you want to kick off and tell us what your number 1 of 4 things, we've got 2 each, number 1 of 4 things that you learned when we ran away from home?
Yes, I would. I'd enjoy that, Al. I would.
Well, will you? And
sure.
Could you?
Sure.
And may you?
So I think the biggest thing for me that I didn't really realize was that I was in some kind of hibernation mode or sleep mode. after the 2-year shit show we've been through with the pandemic. And I think we took the very, keeping ourselves safe, keeping other people safe very seriously. Because of where we got locked down and when the vaccine came out, we didn't get our triple vax status until early this year. So I think there was a part of us that was just very much in the mode of, well, this is what we do. We stay away from people. We don't venture out too far. Yes, we do things, but we do them safely. And that was just the way we did it. And I'm glad that we did do it. It's a responsible thing to do. But getting back out there on the road, I just felt like there was a part of me that had been asleep for 2 years that suddenly popped a head out and was like, oh yeah, there's a whole world out here. You used to travel full time. And it just, I felt more myself. And I know this sounds really cheesy, but I felt more myself than I have in a long, long time. And I think it was just really an important experience for us both to go through, to actually remember the life we used to have, appreciate the life we used to have, and wake ourselves up to the fact that, the world is slowly moving on and these things are now possible again. And it's something that brings us joy and happiness and motivation. And it brought me clarity, I think.
I think that's true because I think I said to Leanne when I came back, I was like, what the fuck am I doing in my life? Because I would spend 20 minutes reorganizing the dishwasher. Yes, the dishwasher, just to ensure that everything was in efficiently and we get as much in as we possibly can. And I think the second I got back, I was like, I stuffed 4 pans in there, 6 glasses. I went, sod it, it's going on. And I just realized that I just spent the last year obsessing about stuff. And I think it's kind of weird because I'm not a psychologist, as Leanne is a psychologist, so she'll probably be able to unpack this a bit more. But I felt like I was worrying about things that are within my control, like the dishwasher, because there were a lot of things outside of my control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we all experienced parts of that over the pandemic, whether it be loading the dishwasher, whether it be taking more interest in your skincare, whether it be speaking to people on a certain time on a certain day. I think, like you say, it's those things that we can control suddenly became super important for us to control.
I mean, that's probably a good holistic lesson to have as well, is that if you find yourself, you are micromanaging parts of your life, then just ask yourself why. If you weren't always doing that, ask yourself why. Is it because you feel you haven't got control over broader aspects or other aspects or relationship or work or something like that?
Yeah, I agree.
So your first one you learned was that you were in hibernation mode. That's lesson number 1 of 4. Lesson number 2 was I realized that I didn't need as much shit in my life as I thought I did. Now, when I say shit, I mean stuff. I don't mean bad stuff, because I've got a lovely wife, a lovely hound, and a beautiful house, and we live in a lovely country. So there's very little shit that happens in my life, thankfully. However, I realised that I have in my Leanne calls it a mega desk, because I have a stand for a monitor. I have a monitor on one side, I have an arm for my computer on the other side. I have keyboards, I have cameras, I have lights, I have all this kind of stuff. And I realised I was actually more efficient working literally from my laptop. Because when we packed, just to give you context, we packed for 4 days and we were away for almost 4 weeks. So we had to go rush out and buy underwear at one point and more T-shirts and stuff. But in terms of work, we literally took our laptops and our chargers. I think Leanne didn't even bring a charger for her phone.
I didn't. I forgot it. Yeah.
So we had to work with what we had, and I found myself much more efficient, literally just sitting there, opening my laptop and doing stuff, than I did when I was sitting there with my big fancy monitor and my this and my second monitor and my other bullshit I've got hanging around here. And so that was a real big realization for me that I think I was probably, this is a warning that I might be getting a bit personal. I think I was probably filling my life with stuff because I couldn't have the experiences that we'd had previously. I mean, what do you think?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, you're filling some kind of gap and as well as what it was things to get excited about. There's very little to get excited about in the multiple months we spent in lockdown. So ordering a new bit of tech and waiting for it to arrive and setting it up, that was an event. Like, do you remember when I got my AirPods? That was like that was like a 2-hour event of like, well, let's unpack them, let's look at them, aren't they pretty? It's ridiculous.
Lick them.
So yeah, no, I think that makes sense. It was something to do as well, but and it's cool to have all your tech stuff. And do you think maybe it has it kind of helped you reappreciate what you could do with the tech you have, rather than perhaps just the day-to-day stuff you were using it for?
Yes and no. I think we're sitting at a table here that I bought from a local kind of like IKEA style and I love this table, but actually we've got like a podcast, like microphone arms, and it's all tidy underneath. It took me like 3 days to make this, to put this table together and nail all the cables underneath and all this. And I'm like, oh, this is great. But actually, when we were away, I thought all we need is our £20 microphone stand things, our microphones, which were a bit more than £20 to be fair, and our little recorder, and that's all we needed. And we could have done a podcast just as easily there. We don't need a podcast table. So I think there's kind of like one half of me appreciating the tech I have, but the other half of me is looking at it and going, well, what do I actually need? And there's lots of stuff I want because I'm a super nerd, but there's not much I need. I've got a great camera for webcams, for meetings. It's a brilliant camera, and I've spent probably 3 days setting up the lighting and the background, all that for it. I don't need that shit. You're on Zoom. No one expects you to look like, well, not that I did look like Robbie Downey Jr. in the first place, but no one expects you to look professional if you're on Zoom. They're just like, well, you're in Zoom, aren't you? Like you have someone you speak to quite regularly who doesn't really care about the background and the lighting and stuff like that. They're just like, but they're a really, really successful person. So you think, let's just stop being a dick.
And I think that's an important thing for people to remember. If you are planning to live and work abroad in 2022 and you're looking around your house and going, how the fuck do I pick? How do I scale this down? It's exactly that. Like, what do you need to do your job? What do you need to live? What do you need to enjoy your life or your hobbies, rather than those things that it's nice to have, but I don't need them.
Do you know what'd be interesting? An interesting experiment is that if you're sitting there listening to this, or walking your dog, or whatever, or out and run, or gym, good for you if you're in the gym, listening to this, then just maybe consider going and doing a 4 weeks away somewhere, and just take what you think you need. And after 4 weeks, you'll soon realize the stuff you really, really need. Like, we have a couple of coffee machines that we use, one for milk, one an espresso thing for milk, one for like grounds and all that. I did miss that.
Yeah, I missed that too.
I really missed that. But in terms of my piece of kit, which is here to the right, which is a pre-processor for the microphone that I've got sitting, I'm not talking to, literally the second microphone I've got, which is about 300 quid. And
there's 3 mics and there's only 2 of us.
And I'm like, I don't need this. I want it, but I don't need it. So I think it's really, really useful info. So what I think in summary, before I go on with myself, is that I'm trying to say is that the stuff you think you need, you probably don't. And then if you are listening to this and you've been in one place for like a year or 2 years because of the pandemic, and you've bought yourself a ice cream maker from a Lidl.
I'm sorry, what?
That's Leanne has. Then you realize when you pack up, no, you probably don't need your ice cream maker. You probably just go and buy your ice cream from somewhere else, or your sorbets or whatever. Anyway, so the summary I think I'm saying is that I've learned, and I'm not judging you, but I've learned that I don't need 50%, maybe even 60% of the stuff I've got. I just don't need. Mm-hmm. What's your lesson number 3, lovely Leah?
So my number 2, our number 3, is work related, I guess. And I guess it is a downside of the incredible adventure that we had traveling, is work. And I think this depends on what you do for work, if you work at all, but we're self-employed, which means that our workload isn't always predictable. Mm-hmm. So the first 10 days or so, it was perfect. We were kind of getting up early. I know, not like us. Getting up early, doing our work, finishing like mid-afternoon, heading out, planning where we're going to go next, experiencing things and meeting people. And then I think it was like the end of week 2, being week 3, that we both just got shit coming at us. And I think it was when we were in Zadar. It was the last week, wasn't it? We arrived in Zadar on Sunday evening. We didn't set foot in the old town until Thursday afternoon.
It's true, but not in the old town, not outside, within half a mile of our apartment. That's just to walk the dog. That was it.
Yeah, because we just had too much to do and too much to work on and proposals to send and fires to fight. And it's great, of course it is, because it's that work that facilitates the lifestyle we have. So if that happens, you sit down, you suck it up and you do it. That's just what you have to do. But I think for me, what was a useful reminder, because we used to move around very frequently. We used to 1 to 2 weeks at a time. And I think if you are considering a nomad-ish lifestyle and you have an unpredictable workload, my advice would be stay minimum 2 weeks in one place. Minimum. Because if you get a heavy work week, it's written off. And I must admit, I did leave Zadar feeling like I'm not sure we've had enough time to really kind of get to grips with it and see. We had a great time, we did some lovely things, but not in the same way we did other places. So I think for me, if we're going to, when we go back to a more transient lifestyle over the rest of the year, is actually planning our trips much slower and spending longer in one place, just to make sure that if we have that situation occur, we've got the time to enjoy it and we don't feel cheated, and also we don't feel too stressed or pressured to try and get shit done, so we have time to go and experience where we are. There's no need to have that pressure on yourself. If you've got that flexibility, there is no need to put that pressure on yourself. Just stay a bit longer. If it turns out you've got loads of time, great, that's more time to relax or enjoy, or get on a train and go an hour for a day trip. There's options, but just take that pressure off, I think.
I think that's really, really good advice. And I think that if there's anyone who's maybe I'm going to say, I was going to be ageist then, I was going to say anyone who's younger, but it could be older, it could be our age, I don't know. So forget what I was just going to say. If there's anyone who is thinking, I want to go and I've been in this house for 2.5 years, I just want to go and see the world, I'm going to go to India and I'm going to go spend 3 nights in every single place and get everything done in 6 months, I would counsel, I think we both counsel you to stop for a second and just think, if you're not working, then maybe you could get everything done in 3 nights. But then the problem is you arrive in, I don't know, in Laos or Lao. I don't know how to say this. Is it Laos?
I've heard them both used.
So you arrive there and then you realise that in 4 days' time there's going to be a great festival, but you have to leave in 3 days. Well, I would counsel you just to calm the fuck down.
Embrace the flexibility.
Embrace the flexibility and enjoy your time, and just wake up and go, I will move on when I'm ready to move on. And it's not that, particularly now with almost nobody flying anywhere, it's not that expensive to do things last minute.
No, and there's always so many options of places to stay. And yeah, I think it's, unless you're going to, there's 2 ways to do it, isn't there? There's either you have an understanding of your workload, you put in contingency time if things come in, and you exactly plan how long you're going to need in each place. Or you just keep it loose and flexible. Either way, it works perfectly, but I think it's just understanding that if you are self-employed, if you have a workload that can fluctuate, building that into your plans. Because if that happens and you've not got enough time, it's just shit.
Absolutely. So just to summarize what we're up to. So the first one was your hibernation. Realized, and I think a lot of people will hopefully resonate with this, that over the last 2 years they've spent more time at home than they have probably cumulatively over the last 20 years. So hibernation. My first one, i.e. number 2, was stuff. Number 3 was about it's not really work, it's about ensuring that you spend enough time in one place. So I think my number 4 is people. And I think I'm going to be the reason I took a pause there is that I want to be really clear that we do love Istria. We do. But Istria is, we're near Pula, which is the centre of Istria, like the capital of Istria. And it's still a tiny town by most standards. We're out in the country in a lovely village that is full of tourists in the summer, for about 8 weeks, but then is a very sleepy village, seaside village, for the rest of the year. And I think what we discovered was that when we went to Dubrovnik, for example, we met up with a lady called Barbara, who did our visa. Love her. We are in love with that lady. She's amazing. And we met up with Barbara, and she brought us to a meetup with like maybe 6 or 7. I think it was just ladies, wasn't it? I was the only male there.
You were.
And they all had things going on. Mm-hmm. They had businesses, they had hustles, they had freelance gigs, they had whatever.
Jobs.
And jobs, yeah. And we got more fired up, I think, after the 90 minutes spending with them than we have done potentially for the 9 months of spending in Istria. Now, I'm not saying don't go to Istria. Istria is beautiful, lovely, great. But it's like going to rural Wales, if you're from the UK, as opposed to Manchester. It's like going to Brisbane as opposed to Sydney if you're from Australia. I'm not sure that works, actually. Maybe Brisbane's just as big, I don't know. But, New York City, New York upstate, whatever it is, wherever you are from, you've got, if you're not careful, then, let me just wind back a bit. Someone said, and I think it might be Jim Rohn, who said, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend most time with. And if you spend most time with people who are A, retired, or B, they're on their off season because they work really, really hard for like 12 weeks in the summer, and then the rest of the year they take off, it kind of rubs off on you. Can you pick up from me? Because I feel like I'm losing my thread of what I'm trying to say.
I think it's a bit of an extension of what I was saying with the whole hibernation thing. Like, we picked Istria because it was quiet, because it was sparsely populated. We made this decision when the pandemic was still in full force and the vaccine was only just being rolled out. So we wanted space, we wanted safety. We were stuck in apartments or townhouses for the majority of lockdown before that. So we were like, well, if it happens again, we want space and a garden. And so we made that decision for space at a point where that's what we needed and we craved. And I think what we didn't necessarily anticipate or foresee is that quietness, with that quietness can come complacency. I think if you are still working, if you are self-employed, probably more so if you're self-employed or if you have your own business, the motivation has to come from you. You've got nobody holding yourself to account apart from yourself. So it can get easy, and especially in the summer, it can get easy to kind of slip into that slow-paced way of life. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I would flip that advice and say the same to people who are considering living and working abroad and now retired or don't work or having an automated income. You might find a similar thing in a city where you're surrounded by people in the hustle and you're like, this isn't what I wanted. This is what I've had for the last 30 years of my career. I just want to slow it down. And I think but again, it wasn't something that we realized being here. It was something we realized leaving here. And I think we had a similar experience in Split. Which is an incredible city. We'll talk about Split another time because it is epic. But a similar thing there. There's so much activity and energy and entrepreneurialism in it. It just fires you up. And I think if you are self-employed or have your own business and you're considering where to live in the world or where within a country to live, for us, and it might be different for you, for us, we got a lot of energy and inspiration from being around people who are still in the hustle. We talked about work, business more.
This is between the two of us.
Yeah, in those 4 weeks than we probably have in the last 4 months. Absolutely
true. I mean, someone once said to me, it's space versus pace. And I think that you can look at that from both points of view. If you've lived in an apartment in central London, then you've not got much space, but you've got lots of pace. And you might want to then go and live in rural Berkshire where you've got lots of space but no pace. But I feel like you need a balance, which is why I don't judge anymore people who've got like bolt holes, or what do they call it when they've got little they've got apartments in the city. There's a fancy name for it, and there's a French name
like
for
crash
it.
pad.
Crash pad. Pied de something is the other word. I'm sure you're shouting out what the word is, listener. But I feel like you kind of have both, because if you're not careful, then like spending time in Istria was incredible and I've absolutely loved it. But I have spent a lot of time looking at the same flowers and worrying and stressing about the dishwasher. Now, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really wouldn't, because that's what we needed after the pace of what we had. but it's kind of a yin-yang sort of situation that you can't have all yin or all yang. Can you? I don't know. Are you allowed to have all yin?
I think you're allowed to have all yang, but not all yin.
Fair enough. So go for the yin, but not all the yang. But I think the point is that we felt very different living in, for example, we lived in and to be fair, it was a freaking beautiful apartment in Zadar. It was a duplex with a roof terrace on one side, and then the other side was a covered terrace with a hot tub in it. I know.
Go to our Instagram if you want to see. It was cool.
Now, we have to say this is off season, so we got it for about 700 quid for the week or something, whereas in the summer, it'd probably be more like 7 grand for the week. I don't know. But just that made me realise that actually, like our house here, we've got parts of our garden that we've literally never been in. And I'm like, well, do we need all that? Was it an ego thing on my part, when we saw this place and going, imagine what people will think when they see this beautiful villa in its own land and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But what I do know is that we adapted and we lived in a one room for one night. Remember in Plivice?
Yeah.
And that was perfectly fine. And then we dealt with a beautiful house in Korčula that had got lots of terraces, but lots of wind as well. That was like wind rather than trumps. And so we lived in different places, and I realised then, I think that if you're not careful by choosing a house, you're either basing it slightly on ego, or you're running away from the last place you stayed at and you want the opposite of it.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think the takeaway for me is more to be the risk of sounding like it's like more just us. I think you need to be present, and you need to be mindful of like how where you're living is impacting how you're motivated, how you're feeling, how you're living your day-to-day life, and actually realizing that places can work for a time or a purpose. But actually thinking like, what am I missing out on? What if I'm feeling unmotivated or inspired? Is that because of where I'm living? Is it because of the people I'm surrounded by? And I think for me the biggest lesson I learned from that was actually that, and I hope moving forward would be that ability to snap myself out of it if I feel that way again, that I'm getting complacent, I'm getting a bit lazy, I'm getting a bit depressed, being honest. Mm-hmm. That I actually think, well, I can change where I am, where we live. We have that privilege. So let's do it. And what actually do I want? What is best for me right now? We're at a point where we're trying to build our businesses. We're trying to do important and cool and creative things. So we need that motivation. We need that inspiration. We need that busyness. In 5 years' time, a different story, man. We'll be retiring to some fabulous villa in Portugal, I have no doubt. But until then, we need to think about how where we live facilitates our work and our life. And I think that's something that I'd forgotten.
Such a great lesson. So first we started off with you telling us lesson number 1, which was that you realized you were hibernating, which is probably down to the pandemic. Question number 2 was I realized that I've got far too much stuff. Number 3 was that, what was number 3? Work, yes, you have to be careful. Don't just spend 3 days somewhere if you're working full time, because you might end up spending those 3 days in your room. Number 4 was the people in the environment in terms of what's around you can definitely affect how you feel. So those are the 4 main lessons. Any other things to add?
I think the other thing that was confirmed for us, because we've been talking about this probably since the summer, is how for us when we have kind of a change in our life or a shift, or particularly when we want to do something and we can't make it happen, like remaining in Croatia for visa purposes, it's just not workable for us to stay continuously. There is a grieving process that we tend to go through. I think we've experienced when I've been made redundant. I think you experienced it when you were bankrupt. We both experienced it after Brexit. We experienced it when we had to leave here. I think we definitely experienced going through the pandemic. And it is a grieving process. And I think for us, what's worked really well is that we recognize it. We understand the stages. We communicate and talk openly about what stage we think we're in. And I just think that self-awareness makes the whole process slightly easier. I mean, it's still not a nice process to go through, but I think that self-awareness helps. So if we take Croatia, for example.
Just before you do, for anyone who's not come across this 5-stage grieving process, will you just go through it?
Well, that's what I was going to do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It to Croatia.
Sorry, carry on.
So if we take Croatia, the 5 stages, exactly that. So the first stage is denial. So can you remember when we were in denial about having to leave Croatia after 12 months?
Yeah, we were talking about getting a visa here. We were talking about staying here. We were talking about hiding in the woodshed.
I think it was more that we're like, we'll make it happen. We'll find a way. We'll talk to Barbara or someone else clever, and we'll figure it out.
They can't kick us out.
They can't kick us out. We'll figure it out.
Narrator, they can kick you out.
They didn't figure it out. So that's denial. Second stage, anger. And I think we have experienced this. And I think we've also seen other people experience it for us, which is lovely. You know, like, what do you mean you can't stay? Why wouldn't you be able to? You're contributing to the economy and you're putting money back in and why would people not want? And we felt it too. Why do they not want us? It was anger. It was like, well, fuck you then. If you don't want us, we don't want you. We'll leave. And then stage 3 happens.
Which is?
Bargaining.
Oh.
And I think the point of bargaining for us was like, you saw a post from Sarah Dyson off of Expat in Croatia. And if you have any questions about living or working in Croatia, Sarah Dyson is the guru to look at. expatcroatia.com, I think.
I think so. If you just type in expats in Croatia, I think, or expat
in Croatia.
Type that into Google, it'll be the #1 result.
Yeah.
In fact, type anything about Croatia, living in Croatia, and she'll go at #1.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you saw a post on maybe Instagram or Facebook from Sarah saying something like, oh, you think you can't stay on continuously on the nomad visa, but you can. We were like, can we really? Oh, so then we're like, okay, well, let's talk to Sarah and see what she says, and maybe if we do this, then we can stay. But what if we did that? And then I think we did go through that bargaining process of well, what can we compromise to make it work? And ultimately, the compromise was too big for us at the time, so we moved on.
On to bargaining. Are we on acceptance? Depression. Oh yeah.
Those blue days.
That was probably January, February, was it?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, how did it affect you, the whole depression stage of leaving Croatia?
I think I probably did it in I want to say typical male way, but that's probably not a cool thing to say in these times. But I did it in like being angry and going, oh, I don't care, and it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I can live anywhere. But actually, just going, this is shit. And so I think gin time moved forward by 20 minutes each day. And then in terms of work, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do any work. That was the biggest. Do you know what? That was the biggest thing. Is I found myself going and doing 2 or 3 hours in the morning, the absolute necessary to get it done, and then just going and watching TV or something, on your phone, like Netflix or whatever on your phone for the rest of the afternoon, pretending that I was doing stuff like the recycling or whatever, but I wasn't.
Yeah, I was like.
What about you?
Similar. Like alarm goes off. Oh well, there's not much to get up for, so I might as well stay in bed until 9, and just lack of motivation and just feeling a bit meh. Almost like you're just waiting to leave. Like there's no point in getting excited about anything else because you're just going to have to leave it. So what's the point? Let's just sit and wallow. And yeah, I think we both felt that. And I think that's why when we went to Zagreb for a few days and got a bit of a taste of something different, and then the sniff of a possibility of something different, I think we just adventured the shit through our depression stage. We were like, let's run away from home and be depressed somewhere else. Let's go be depressed in Dubrovnik because that looks cool.
Or Korčula.
Or Zadar or Split.
So I have a question then. So there's a 5th stage, which I think is acceptance.
Yes.
Do you think we've hit that stage yet?
I think I've hit that stage. And I think more so because when I came back, when we came back, I think I was looking forward to coming home, in inverted commas. I was also a little bit anxious that it would suck me back in again, and I'd feel sad again to have to leave it. And I must admit, and I love our house here, I absolutely love it, but it wasn't quite as shiny as I remembered it being. And I think that's simply because, not that it's not as shiny and not that Istria isn't as incredible as it is, but my mind had moved on. My mind was in acceptance. My mind has prepared myself that this chapter is coming to an end and you're ready.
I totally agree. And I think that we're no longer angry. We're no longer, I mean, it's basically, if you think about, if you split up with someone, then you go through the first one, which is denial. So no, we can get together. No, you say no.
We can make this work.
Yep. And then bargaining is, well, what happens if I changed? And the next one is depression.
With anger first.
Sorry, anger. And then we've all been there. And then there's bargaining. If I change, then can we get back together? Then there's depression. Life's not the same without him or her. Then there's the acceptance. And I feel that almost like with us going and cheating on Istria with other on Pula with other towns in Croatia, we've got it out of a system, and we feel that we respect Istria, and Pula and Medulin where we live, but we potentially might have accepted that we're going to leave. Well, we have accepted we're going to leave in.
There are potentially bigger loves ahead of us.
There is. And loved our time here, and we're in no way, in any way, shitting on Pula because it is such a great place. Medulin is the most amazing place. If you've never been, you should go. But yeah, we are ready for our next challenge. Mm-hmm. So on that bombshell, we've talked about it before. I can't say that. I'm sure it's trademarked. So we have been talking, because we were in the car for probably around about 26 hours all in all. Because fun fact, we drove from the top of Croatia down to the bottom of Croatia, and then we drove back halfway back up Croatia. Then we drove back down again. Then we got 3 ferries to an island. Then we got another 2 ferries back onto the mainland. Then we came back through. So basically, we've done probably about 2,500 kilometers, maybe 3,000 kilometers in 3 weeks. So we spent a lot of time in the car together. So we have been talking about you guys. We've been talking about our podcast. We've realised that we've been talking a lot about ourselves. We
do seem to have done quite a lot of that, yeah.
That's fine by us, because we like listening to ourselves. However, we think that we're going to, we alluded to this a couple of weeks ago, and we are going to start changing the format of this more to be how to answer your questions. So if you're listening to this and you have a question about how to live and work abroad, please, for God's sake, jump on your email or on Instagram. Email sidewayslife@gmail.com. Instagram, search for a Sideways Life and DM us. We're not on Twitter, are we?
No, that's an angry place, Twitter. We don't need that vibe.
And then you probably do us on Facebook. Don't do us on Facebook. You probably find us on Facebook and message us on Facebook. But tell us your questions. We want to know, because if you give us our questions, like for example, the lovely lady from Austria, would you remember Patricia, was it?
Yes, and big thank you to Patricia, who reached out and I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, to Leanne, who's in Ireland as well. We will come back to you those questions. As you may have heard, we've been a bit busy. Sorry. We will come back to you. And also, I've noticed as well, there's a couple of emails in our Sideways account from people who have lovely people who have reached out and want to be guests on the show, which we asked for last time. We will come back to you. Mm-hmm. We are still getting our shit together after our unexpected journey, so bear with us. But yes, if you have questions, I think Tara as well, who reached out on Instagram and wanted our top tips for Airbnb, which if you want that as well, let us know. I know she has questions. She hasn't sent them yet. She just said she has questions. Send the questions. What a cool episode that would be. We'll answer your questions rather than talk about our shit.
Yeah, and tell us when you DM us or email us, say, I heard you asking for questions on the podcast, episode 69. Tee-hee. Then send us across those questions, because we'd love to answer them. Or if we don't know the answer, we will find someone who does.
Indeed.
Okay, I think that's probably us for now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. What were we aiming for? 40 minutes?
40 minutes. And how many minutes have we been going?
39?
Nice. Nailed this
Nailed
podcasting
it.
thing.
Nailed it.
Right, guys, we'll see you next week for the beginning of potentially a new era for episode 70, where we start making it more about you and less about us dickheads.
Yeah. I think that sums it up, really.
Bye for now.
Bye.